And here we go. It's been live streamed. So I will just make the technical announcement that this is a public event, etc. And then welcome Christina, and then you take over. No? Good. Here we go. So a warm welcome to this webinar, which is about an important topic, the role of women in community energy. Before we start the webinar, let me just briefly introduce myself and give you some technical information before I hand over to the chair of our session and moderator, Christina. My name is Stefan Xenger. I'm Secretary General of the World Wind Energy Association. We are hosting this event here. Please be aware that the webinar is a public event. We have a live stream on YouTube, and the recordings will also be made available on YouTube. So whenever you show your face here, when you raise something, when you speak, be aware it's public. Yes. I would request everyone to stay muted until you're requested, invited to speak. There will be time also for questions from the audience. At that time, in the meantime, please use the chat window to type your questions, write your questions here, so that our moderator, Christina, can also refer to that. Yeah, without further delay, I would like then to introduce Christina Andre. Christina Andre is a community energy activist, I would say, a renewable energy activist as well, very active in renewable energy for many years. Christina, you are a board member of the German Community Energy Alliance, and you're also co-chairing, together with me, the Community Energy Working Group at IRENA, at the IRENA Coalition for Action. And in this project, you are a member of our advisory committee. Christina, I have the pleasure now to hand over to you.
Thank you, Stefan, very much. So welcome to all. I'm gonna lead you through today through the 1.5 hours, the next 1.5 hours. And first of all, I would like to introduce one by one all the participants. There is a very nice panelist list, and it's also a very exciting topic, women and citizen energy or energy communities and generally renewable energy. I would like to introduce first Timo Karl from World Wind Energy Association, and he's also working on the University of Bonn in Germany, and he's responsible for the topic of community energy for the World Wind Energy Association. He finishes his doctoral dissertation at the University of Bonn at the moment, where he's working also as a research assistant. His area of specialization are the decentralized energy transformation and governance of the European and the supranational climate negotiations. I'm sorry, with special focus on the governments. And Timo will present also a study, Women in Community Energy through Openness and Diversity, and will be presenting the German results. Please, Timo, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Christina. Yeah, I'm happy today to present the findings of the first year of our study, Women in Community Energy. And we are at the starting point of the second year. And yeah, I'm happily looking forward later to the discussion with yours, also to get some ideas and input for the second year. But well, let me share my screen, my presentation. Let's see. So now we should be in a presentation mode, and I hope you all can see it. We are not doing this project alone, but the project Women for the Energy Transformation is conducted by World Wind Energy Association and the Landesverband Erneuerbare Energien, so the Association for Renewable Energy here in North Rhine-Westphalia. together with my project partner, Madeleine Bode. I worked out this first study, and we also cooperate with the Japan Community Power Association, and I'm happy that Shota joined us today to present after me the results from Japan for the role of women in community energy. You can also see that we had a lot of supporting partners for this project. Well, let's start. Excuse me, also me coughing sometimes. Let's start with a key number, the participation rate of women in community energy here in North Rhine-Westphalia, but we also guess that this is kind of representative for Germany as a whole. So the number is 29% of shareholders in community energy are female, and they held 27% of the shares in community energy. We also took a look at the participation rate in management bodies of community energy, and we found some diverse results. So as a key finding, if women participate in community energy, they also participate in the management bodies. If it's a structure of a board, 35% of the members are women. We have different numbers. If the management body is an executive board, a supervisory board, then only 19 or 21% of the members are women. So this makes a huge difference for the participation rate of women. We also found differences if we took a look at different types of entities in community energy. So there are much more women in cooperatives than in the form of limited companies. We have 33% in cooperatives, only 14% in limited companies. Of course, there are some ideas that the lower risk, the less money you need to participate in a cooperative, that this could be a reason that women participate more in cooperatives. We want to evaluate this also in the second study year. So for the moment, it's close to get this idea, but I just want to point out the numbers which we have on a scientifically basic for the moment. And well, let me also add, combined with the entities, we also found differences between technologies. So we have more women in photovoltaics than in wind energy. And it's also most probably this is connected to the entities, because there are many cooperatives which are in photovoltaics, and we have many limited companies which invest in wind energy. We also had the interesting result that the surveys which were answered for us from women, and which also made it clear that there is a woman in a responsible position in the management body, because only then she could answer the survey. In this community energy entities, we find a lot more women. So when women are in responsible position in community energy, it's very probably that you have also more female shareholders in general. 41% participation rate in this community energy entities in comparison to the average on the left side, 29%. Straight the opposite. If you take a look at very small projects, and with small projects we defined as projects which have less than 40 shareholders. In this case, only 7% of the shareholders are women. Women are not the only social group which is underrepresented in community energy. We asked the community energy entities, what do they perceive about other social groups which might be underrepresented. You see them here. The highest number were for people with migration background, but also young people, people with impairments, people with low income, our guests are perceived as to be underrepresented. And here, I think very interesting results we got about the perceived reasons. Why is the participation rate of women this low? And I very beautifully marked for you the differences between the guesses which came from men and those which came from women. So men, or the other way around, women much more emphasize the aspect on the left side that it's a lack of financial resources which keep them from investing in community energy. Also on the right side, the second one from the right side, the lack of time from women is much more emphasized through female shareholders than through male shareholders, while at the opposite, the thinking that technical projects might be deterrent towards women and they don't participate because they are not comfortable with technical projects is much more emphasized from male shareholders with 26% than from women with 18%. Then we asked shareholders, what was your path to participation? How did you came to your community energy entity? And well, we see also here differences between the male and the female answers. I think one very important factor is the last one, the own research, the individual action, which is taken in a much more probably rate from men than from women. 49% of the men came by own research, by own individual action to community energy, while only 30% of women answered this. And on the other side, women more often answer that they had personal contact to the initiator of the project. Here we have 21% women, only 12% men. Or the recommendation from friends and family plays a much bigger role for women than for men. We have 25% of the women which answered this, only 12% men. There's also, we also ask for the assumption from the shareholders. What are socio-economic factors for participation in community energy? What makes it more probably that people will invest in community energy? And we see gender is not the first answer from the shareholders. First answer is that you need a specific level of educational qualification to be, well, self-secure enough for such an investment. You also need a special level of income to have a basic for the investment in community energy. And then gender was rated at a third place. Well, I come to the conclusion for the first year. We see a rising participation of women. Still, they are, of course, underrepresented. We're on a good way, but far away from equal participation. We found out that inclusive acting seems to push female participation. So we made some qualitative interviews actually, and with those community energy entities which stated that they act very open, that beside the investment possibility, they also give a lot of social interaction in the community energy entity. There it seems that the female participation is higher. It's also one assumption which we want to evaluate in the second study year more. And the participation rate in community energy here in Germany, in North Rhine-Westphalia, is quite representative for the role of women in civil engagement and also for the renewable energy sector in general. We always have numbers around 30% and also in community energy. And I recommend you always our project site to keep up to date with our newest results. And before I finish, I want to say some words to the target of the second project year. So we have now some data from people which are already inside of community energy, deal with community energy, are engaged as shareholders in community energy. So first target of the second year will be to approach people outside of community energy, which are outside of energy and climate, economics, politics, which are a little bit far from this field. And we will, compare individual interests and restrictions from these people, men and women, with those data we already have. And second step then to develop kind of correlations, gender-based, and find out if there is a big difference, not only between men and women, but also for the inside and the outside group. And in the final step, develop recommendations together with community energy entities here in North Rhine-Westphalia, also in Japan. Shota will say more about this now soon. What action can be taken to broaden the social participation in community energy, and of course to raise the number of participation of women. So thanks very much for the moment. And I hand back to Christina, and of course, I'm ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Timo. As Timo already said, I would like to introduce Dr. Shota Furuya. He's a researcher at the Institute of Sustainable Energy Policies and ICEP, and he has worked on community-based renewable energy development in Japan. He focuses on the processes with different local stakeholders, share a sustainable and creative future vision. Shota will present the study Women in Community Energy in Japan. Please, Shota, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. So I share my screen. My name is Shota Furuya from Institute for Sustainable Energy Policies in Japan. And also I'm working with Japan Community Power Association. And I did the survey in Japan, and I'd like to share the most important results just briefly. And last year, I conducted the survey research with the member organizations of the Japan Community Power Association. And after doing the research, I published the research report both in English and Japanese. So for the detail of the results of the survey, please refer to this report, which is uploaded on the website of ICEP. So I'd like to share the most important result of this research. And we distributed 53 questionnaires and received 22 responses. So response rate is 41.5%. And the preliminary conclusion is the result of a questionnaire survey of member organizations of the Japan Community Power Association revealed that the ratio of women participation in community energy project and their management in Japan is low, very low. And while there is awareness that the ratio of women's participation is low among leaders, there's little awareness or action to actively increase the ratio, unfortunately. So the result was anticipated before doing this research, but it was backed by the concrete numbers. But it's women's participation in Japan is very low, but there is some measure to improve the situation, such as the introduction of the quotas. So I will be back to that later. So what is the percentage of business entities ownership by women? Obviously, it's very low, less than 10%, 12 cases. So there are some exceptional cases, but they have some background. Generally, the women's ownership is very low. And we asked, how do you evaluate the percentage of women participating in management members in your company's community energy business so far? So more than half of the respondents said low or very low. And have you ever actively discussed women's participation and role in community energy? No, 64%. In general, do you think it is more difficult for women to participate in community energy projects than for men? No, 73%. So I can say that there is a huge gap between the understanding of the situation and the reality. And finally, have you been active in increasing women's participation opportunities in connection with your community energy business? No, 64%. So those results show very low participation and also gap between the understanding and the reality. So it was, I anticipated this result beforehand, but I can say this is the reality. But good news is that the Japan Community Power Association changed its board members last year. And there are 10 community power leaders are sitting in the board members. Then now we have 5 men community power leaders and 5 women community leaders. So in the management board member of the Japan Community Power Association, we practice the quotas, equal participation between men and women. So, and I observed the discussion so far, and I can say that clearly the discussion and the decision making, and also the atmosphere of the leaders clearly changed. So I'd like to recommend Japan Community Power Association member organization to introduce quotas to improve the situation. Yeah, that's the preliminary conclusion from Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shota. So it is very kind of one way hopeful, the other way it's a bit worrying that there is such a big gap. But we know this. We know it from other fields, not only from renewable energy. So I would like to I would like to introduce our panelists, experts, and to collect the opening statements from them. And I would also like to, I will start with Laura Williamson. She's responsible for directing outreach and communication activities in REN 21, an international policy network. Laura's other activities include strategic development and coordination of a biennial international renewable energy conference. Laura has co-authored numerous reports on the sustainability of energy systems and the contribution of renewables to increased climate resilience. She holds degrees from the University of Chicago and Tufts University, and she has more than 20 years of work experience in the field of renewable energy. Laura, I would kindly ask you to give an opening statement about the study. What do the numbers and findings mean from your perspective, and what do the study results mean for your own work? Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you, Timo and Shota, for summarizing the results. I mean, I think what's really clear, at least from my reading of the results, is, this is not a community energy this is an energy issue, it's a societal question, it's an economic question, and I think it's really clear that we need to, we really need to mainstream gender throughout all these processes. And it's, there's so many overlays that it makes it very difficult to sort of tease out, what can be done and how can things be supported. I mean, there's everything from sort of the support structures that need to be in place for women in order for women to be able to participate productively. There was a study that came out, I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise, it's somewhat of a depressing result, is that the amount of time that women spend on household activities hasn't changed since the 1950s. So, with only 24 hours in the day, the amount of time that women themselves have to actually even be able to participate in community energy or in energy projects themselves is also limited, severely limited by sort of societal expectations and traditions, whether they be maybe coming from industrialized countries or newly emerging economies or developing countries. So it's clear that, the support structures, we also have to be looking at the support structures, and then how do we integrate those? And I think one thing that could sort of help along with this discussion is that, gender becomes a key performance indicator with any kind of project, whether it be a community level project, whether it be a larger scale project, whether it be when we're looking for funding in our various organizations working on energy topics, is what is that balance that's there? I know from REN 21 side, we actually have the inverse. We actually have more women than men. So we're sort of, some might say, well, that's fantastic. But I think it's not about men versus women. It's really about how do we bring that gender balance and we bring those talents and perspectives together. So I think sometimes maybe having something that's more integrated, that's part of the measurement of success, is that gender balance, to really reiterate and bring forward and to remind consistently the need for that for success going forward. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Laura. I would like to pass the floor over to Christina Linz. She is the co-founder and executive director of GVNet Global Women's Network. Her professional journey over the past 23 years has been to advance the energy transition with renewables and energy efficiency, beginning at a regional level in her home country, Austria, then expanding to the European and then global level. Christina, I would kindly ask you to give an opening statement about the study. What do the numbers and findings mean from your perspective? What do the study results mean for your work? Please, Christina, the floor is yours. Christina, maybe you can unmute yourself. Do you have a problem with unmuting? Yes.
I think it's because Christina came in as maybe a guest, so she can't unmute.
Now it works. Thank you. The host didn't allow me to unmute, so now I am. Hello, Christina. Hello, colleagues. Good afternoon. Good evening, especially to Shota. Thanks for the invitation, and congratulations to the World Wind Energy Association for conducting this study, because the situation that we face on the issue and the topic of women in energy is that we lack data. There is not sufficient data around there. GWNet has contributed back in 2018, 2019 on this IRENA study, Renewable Energy Agenda Perspective, which comes up with this number of 32% of women in the renewable sector, which is higher than the 22% of women in oil and gas, but still far away from gender equality. And when we think that at the moment we have about 11.5 million people employed in the renewable sector, and this figure is supposed to increase to 42 million by 2050 globally, it's clear that this industry will only succeed if we manage to attract the best talents of both men and women. And the study that you've just presented on the share of women in community energy is just very much in line, I would say, with these figures. Also on the global level, it's good and important, I think, to shed the light on this, because in our work, we clearly see that if there is not enough data out there, and it is not, we lack gender disaggregated data, it's very difficult to hold decision makers accountable for action in these fields. And we know that with a series of measures, from quotas to flexible workplace policies, etc., it is possible to increase shares of women. We have recently conducted a study on women in sustainable energy strategies to foster women's talents for transformational change. And there we initially looked at other sectors and thought, like, maybe there are, the financial sector or the health sector, maybe there are some strategies and some situations where women are better off. And what we do notice is it's more or less the same everywhere. At the starting level, you have different from sector to sector, but still you have higher shares of women. And when you move up the career ladder, then these shares become less and less. And so there is no silver recipe. But what we also see in our work is that there are best practice examples, be it in the private sector or in the public sector, where companies or governments put the focus on encouraging the role of women in energy. And we believe that by spreading these, you can really lead by example and mobilize and motivate others to do so. And in this sense, I think it's interesting that the World Wind Energy Association is looking on this topic and hopefully will be able to mobilize more action in this space, which will ultimately lead hopefully to higher numbers of women. Because what is clear is that higher shares of women in management of companies result directly in better results of these companies. And I would suspect that it would be also interesting, maybe in any future work you do, it would be interesting to see whether diverse management structures of community energy projects also lead to more profitable and more inclusive projects. So that would be an interesting aspect which might be looked into. I'm working myself for quite a long time in the energy sector. I see that things are changing. They are changing slowly. And maybe with some joint efforts, we can bring this change more quickly, because we are convinced that the energy transition would be more inclusive and also quicker if we had more shares of women in this field. I'll stop here and hand back to you, Christina.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Christina. I see Molly arrived. That's excellent. So I can introduce you to the audience. Molly Walsh is a climate justice and renewable energy expert from Ireland. She lived and worked in Brussels for Friends of the Earth Europe for the past 7 years. She lives now in Berlin and is interested in and engaged in all things related to the European power transition and energy democracy. She is a co-author of the handbook Community Energy, a practical guide to reclaiming power. Molly, I would kindly ask you to give an opening statement about the study. What do the numbers and findings mean from your perspective? What do the study results mean for your own work? Please, Molly, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much. And yeah, sorry for being a bit late. I was just running from a different meeting. Yeah, it's great to be here. And it's really great that we're addressing this issue. Even before I started working on the topic of community energy, I noticed the disparity of energy experts being more men and more male. And I think one of the very interesting things that the study points to and mentions is that, okay, well, why is this happening in the field of energy? when in the climate movement, there are a lot of women represented. So why do they not have this problem in that other kind of side of our movement? I think there's a problem in the energy field, but it's also a problem that's reflected in the rest of our society that starts very young, that people think when things are technical, complicated, and involving a lot of numbers, that girls or women can't handle it. I remember very clearly being in Ireland when I was a energy campaigner there, being in the audience of a TV program. It was a late night TV debate, and it's a very important part of the Irish political system. And there was all men on the panel and a male host, but an audience. But yet all the questions were taken from men, and I had my hand up for a long time. And afterwards I said to the host, when we were talking, he said, "Thanks for being here." I said, "Yeah, next time it would be nice to hear a bit more female voices." And he said to me, and he meant this to be friendly or an excuse, and he said, "Oh, well, the debate was about energy, and it gets technical very quickly. And, you know, when it gets technical, it gets very male." And this was for him, he's a bit of an older guy, but this was for him common sense, just, oh yeah, well, it's technical, it's not for women. And he didn't even think back over that. He didn't even have a second thought. And what's really dangerous and problematic is that women internalize that idea as well. I have many colleagues and friends, incredibly intelligent women, who are intimidated by numbers or graphs, or think that they wouldn't be able to keep up. And this is something that we receive, sadly, from early childhood and throughout our schooling. You know, if you're thinking about applying for engineering in university, then you know you'll land in a course where it's a majority of men. So you have to be really one of the women who's prepared to push against the current, still to do your PhD somewhere in the field of renewable energy, for example. And reading through the study, I thought that's one aspect, that there isn't this societal expectation that the woman's place is on the wind turbine, and there isn't, therefore, within women ourselves, that expectation that that's what we're doing. But also quite shocking, if we think about it more deeply, is this issue around care work, which also holds back women's participation in projects like this in the community energy. And it's one thing that was actually we should be shocked about, is that married women are more likely to participate in such initiatives. Or married women are less likely to. Unmarried women are more likely to. Married men are more likely to participate in such initiatives, and unmarried men are less likely to. And that's because the woman, when she's married or when she's in the home as the primary caretaker, she takes care of all those annoying little things of, like, who's inviting who over for dinner, who's doing the washing, who's taking care of the laundry. So the second shift that women do, just taking care, spending the mental energy, taking care of all those little things, it could be spent on being part of the energy transition, being an active participant in the Energiewende. And when I think of that that makes me really quite angry. It's like, there are women who could be part of this energy transition, but actually they're doing the washing instead, and that's what's holding us back. So I think moving forward to how we need to change it and what we do there, I think events like this, where we discuss it and we talk about ways to overcome it, are really important. And we, as the energy democracy movement, we can't fix everything that's wrong with society. We can't, I often say in other things, you know, we can't fix capitalism. We have to make the Energiewende happen before we can end capitalism, probably. But and we also probably not going to bring down the patriarchy in time to make energy transition. if we have to have the power sector clean by 2035. But let's try to make it better than the rest of society in general. So let's try to make a movement or a community around community energy where there's support and expectation that women are in central roles and in this expertise role. I know that ResCop, the renewable energy cooperatives, 7 or 8 years ago, didn't see this as a important thing to address, but have come really far now and are putting it central to their work and addressing gender and addressing women's participation in energy cooperatives. So yeah, let's try to make this a space where women leaders are held up and celebrated, and where we have an expectation that we see them there. I stopped there for now. I didn't know actually how long I had, but I'm really happy also to participate later in the exchanges.
Don't worry, Molly, that was very authentic. Thank you very much. And of course, I can only add to this that the present system, which gives us more burden, work and less financial possibilities, it's based mostly on centralized structures such as oil and nuclear or fossil fueled systems. So it means we have to go decentral, we have to go renewable, and it's our task, women's task, to give the last kick in this movement and to finally get this thing through. So, but now back to the schedule. I would, Dr. Tetsu Ida should have been coming today. He's a very important person from Institute for Sustainable Energy Policy from ICEP, just as Shota, and he's a leading figure in the anti-nuclear and renewable energy movement long before the disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in 2011. But unfortunately, he will be not participating today. So I would like to ask you, Shota, to take over his role and please give an opening statement in his name about the study and what numbers and findings are meant from the perspective of ICEP, and what do the study results mean for your own work. So please, Shota, you are again on the stage.
Okay. Yeah, I experienced this kind of cases so many times, so I can take over. Yeah, and the research result is very important for the Japanese society, and but unfortunately, I published a report in Japanese and I distributed it to the media, but no one media referred to our work. So that's a reaction of the Japanese society. So we don't have any kind of narrative in Japanese media to talk about gender issue, not only in energy or community power, but as a society, we are very weak in talking about gender issue. There are so many reasons, but that's the reality. But at the same time, I saw certainly good change in younger generations. I published a report, and many students came to ICEP as an internship, and they read my report, and they're really thinking about what's the future of their career. So, thinking about gender in renewable energy business, that is a very important topic for younger students, especially for women. So they are starting to thinking about what's the barriers in the field. So now our internship students doing series of interviews to community power leaders, especially women, and they're asking what's the barriers and how do you manage the barriers. So they're asking. So new generation, younger generation, try to address the issue and try to make a narrative how to deal with it. So that's very good change that triggered to the younger generation. So I think it's very interesting. And yeah, and one early finding from that series of interviews, I say that for the entrepreneurship of renewable energy project, one leader mentioned that women are very weak position to get finance when she start new business. So that's really clear issue in starting business. So I think that topic should be addressed in further research. So, and I'm happy that students find out that kind of barriers in the interview. So yeah, so the situation is very unfortunate, but we have many things to improve. Yeah.
Thank you, Shota, very much. So let's hope that the new generation, I mean, you see Fridays for Future, how it's rolling. So let's see what it brings. I would like to ask you, all of you, all the participants, if you have any question, it's your time now to ask. You can use the chat to ask panelists, or generally put your questions there, or you can also use the hand sign on the raise hand sign on the bottom right of your Zoom window. You can do that almost any time in the next half an hour, so use the time. And I would also like to go over to a panel discussion. We know that we are in the middle of one of the biggest and fastest disruption in the human history, the clean energy disruption, where citizen energy, community energy will play one of the biggest roles at all. And of course, as the energy sector is getting decentralized and more women will participate in this turnaround, therefore studies like this and analysis and programs and tools, toolkits, how to change the situation of women will be essential for the survival of even of our own civilization. So I actually also will put some of the questions for the panelists in the panel discussion round, but I would also like to ask your private how do you practically gather not only data but your personal experience? Do you try to be on the side of citizen energy? So I would each one of you like to ask if you participate in community energy, and if yes, then how? And what is the female participation in your community energy group? So in your neighborhood. So where should I start? I would start with a man, Shota. Are you a member of an energy community?
Yeah, yeah. In my neighborhood, there is one community energy group, and I advise the group. And yeah, that's my private participation in community energy. But as a professional, I have advised so many community energy groups around Japan, and especially I support establishing the first step, starting ideas and inviting stakeholders and start discussion and facilitate how to organize the business entity or project. So I facilitate such process, and every time I facilitate the case, I always said, please invite women and young generation. I really stressed after Fukushima nuclear accident. So, and I think I could slightly change the situation, and I see so many cases, but after the establishment of the community energy business, more women joint case works very well after the establishment. So yeah, that's very clear, my observation. Unfortunately, I don't have numbers or scientific evidence, but in my intuitive observation, it's clear that equal balance of gender works very well. So that's my modest contribution in Japan. Yeah.
There was the scientific person talking. Shota, would you be so kind to choose one of the panelists and put the same question of participation? So
okay.
Thank you.
So Christine, please.
I'm not a member of a community energy project. I lived abroad for about 17 years. When I was in Brussels, I owned my own PV installation, so I installed PV on the terrace of my apartment. When I lived in Brussels, I bought electricity from a green community-based supplier, but I did not actively engage with them. And the same here in Austria. We use green electricity, but we are not actively engaged in the community energy project. That might change because Austria has just come up with a new law where these energy community projects are finally really well possible and also smaller scale. So look forward what is to come and might be some future engagements there.
Excellent. So it means that you might, through the European Union directive, Renewable Energy Directive, you might change your setup in Austria. Do you think you will be able to use that well in your professional field?
Yeah.
Will you need this experience?
I don't think so because I mean I work in that field for quite long. When I did my own renewable energy project, so to say, with my PV installation, I went through all the different steps. I think it's a nice way of also democratic decision taking, etc., etc. It's also, I only came back, I have to say, to Austria about 3 years ago. I have a 2-year-old daughter, so my priorities are to really try to maximize the time I can spend at work to advance the global energy transition. And at the moment, it's maybe also a bit of a time issue that so far I have not yet invested a lot of time to dig into my local community, also because we are kind of, for a professional reason, commuting within Austria. So we live at the moment in 2.5 places at the same time. So I'm not yet fully grounded in the country, and that might also be another reason why I have not fully engaged in such a project. So I don't think that I really need the experience professionally. I think it's definitely a very rewarding one to know where your energy is coming from. I saw that when I had my own PV installation and I had the inverter installed and the meter installed in a way that it was very visible to see how much my small little installation really generated, and it also motivated me to reduce my consumption in order to increase my my share of independence. So all this, having said this, I think it's a community energy is a great way of getting a better feeling and a better sense how energy is produced, where it comes from, and also the value of the good. So I definitely see a benefit in this, but yeah, we'll see what time brings and how things go. I would not exclude it for sure. Also because I in the region where I live, I initiate, it's a very touristic region, and I help them, the community, the city, to win a project on looking into climate and energy issues in the tourism sector. and they also favor now community projects of different tourist establishments. So I might get involved there somehow, but it has not happened yet.
Very exciting. You have to keep us up to date then. And it was a living example. Christina was a living example what Molly was talking about before, of the lack of time for mothers, for women generally. So maybe I would pass over, Molly, to you the floor, and then Laura. Sorry that I left you. You were on the beginning. Now you are then closing up the line. Molly, please.
Yeah, so similar to Christina, I'm recently escaped from Brussels. So in Brussels, I was active in a community energy project there, which is very interesting, called La Pile. I think some people know about it, where there are quite a lot of women involved, actually. It's a very young project, and there's lots of master's students from university there involved, and they've been doing a lot of really great stuff, bringing together diverse communities that don't share language, so communicating with images and visuals, and there's a social housing project there where people have started working together. It's very holistic. They have a community garden, and they also, thanks to the new RED, are also able to put solar panels on the roof of the community housing. And I think it's a community energy project where obviously they have the technical expertise, but you can see that one of the reasons they're so successful is they're using a lot of these skills which are seen as female, which I don't think are necessarily inherently female, but society gives us that role. But this artism, this creativism, and this kind of, they did a lot of listening with the community as well, like going and asking them, what is energy for you and what does it mean for you? And it also fits with what Christina was just saying. What we saw there made such a big difference was like the ability to visualize how much energy is being created on the building. I think we shouldn't underestimate how valuable that is.
So the practical touch. And do you have some plans for Berlin?
Yeah, I need to settle in a bit more first, but yeah, luckily there's plenty happening in Berlin, and also there seems to be a young female aspect to the movement here, so I'm happy about that.
Particularly at the Inselwerke Cooperative. A little tip.
Good to have a tip.
Yes. Some nice places to dock on. Laura, may I ask you to share your either practical experiences or your wishes, what you would love to participate, but maybe you cannot?
Yeah. So, sort of similar to Christine and maybe Molly, I don't know. A mother, three boys. Thankfully, they're sort of aging out of the house. So really, it took me all my time just to keep my nose above water, with work and personal. So definitely relating to what Molly was saying and what I mentioned too in my intervention is the sense that, even 50 years on, women are still carrying the burden, even if we may have, I would say that my husband is a very well-educated and a very open person. But despite that, definitely a larger household burden falls on women, despite well-intentions. I'm mentoring a woman. I'm mentoring now a second woman who is developing a community energy project. So I'm sort of participating vicariously, if you will, and learning about all the sort of the issues, the tensions, and the successes and the obstacles. So that's very interesting. I would like to be part of a community energy project. I like the sense of democratization and sort of building on what Christine said, and I think Molly also touched on it. When you see what is happening with what you're producing, you engage in it. And what better way to really demonstrate the sort of power, no pun intended, but you know, the power of what you're doing, the fact that you're generating an energy source that you can then use to power your video games or your cell phone or whatever. But also to better understand what are your priorities when it comes to consuming that energy. And I think that's a really important aspect that we can all really benefit from, is helping us better define what our priorities are. So, you know, maybe when the last munchkin flees the house, have a bit more time to sort of think about how to get engaged. But in the moment, it's definitely on the periphery.
So we didn't make now a scientific analysis, but I think Timo and Stefan, your study is well researched. The lack of time is one of the biggest issues. Timo has a question, and then I would also like you to join the panel, and then keep it rolling. Thank you. You are muted, Timo.
Now, I want to use the possibility with this fantastic expert here in our panel to ask, because we found out, or at least we heard in our qualitative interviews in the first year, often the feedback that community energy projects which kind of flexibilize the participation possibilities, they find it easier to also find female shareholders. And I would like to ask you, from your professional perspectives, from your networks, from your associations, do you have also professional ideas how to flexibilize working models in your networks to get better access for women? Because maybe this will give us ideas for the second project year. Where can or what can we specialize, ask for the community energy entities? What can they do to flexibilize participation and to rise female participation rates? And sorry for my bad English.
Citizen energy is diverse. There is no bad English there.
I mean, I'll just say from my own perspective, I don't know, Molly, if you were trying to unmute yourself. For me, what you were saying about the flexible approach or making engagement flexible, I think is definitely key. But I also think it's being able to accurately capture the direct relevance to that family or to that woman or to those households. Why should I, as a working mother with 3 children, engage in this topic? Particularly if I'm not working in the field. I mean, all of us are engaged to a certain extent in this field, but if I'm, why? Understanding the why, I think would really help in that motivation, that engagement. And I'll stop there.
I see Christina has an answer or a question. Or both. You have to unmute yourself.
I don't know what I have an answer. I have a proposal maybe. And I think we can learn quite a lot out of the global pandemic that we're in the midst of, or hopefully already have the majority behind us. I'm not fully sure about this, but we have seen that a lot of things can be done remotely, which before would not have been possible. And I mean, I remember a former colleague from Belgium. He was very engaged in the founding of EcoPower and is also quite involved in ResCop. And I just, often heard about these meetings in the evening they are not very conducive to and very compatible with family schedules. So I think we have all learned a lot. I'm not by no means saying that it is all fantastic that we only mainly exchange and meet virtually, but there can be maybe some benefits derived also for the activities and the setup of these community energy projects. And then another, of course, I think what we at the moment, what we have not touched upon, but what is very clear, and also when I look at your study, I mean, it's very clear that we're talking about the privilege in our part of the world that both men and women can own capital. This is not the case. And in many parts of the world, women are still not entitled to own their own bank account. And then, of course, they cannot have shares in anything because they have no access to capital and to assets. And I think this is something which we need to address also in the policy discussion, which needs to change, because with these given boundaries, it's going to be very, very difficult to have them participate in an equal basis. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer, but I have maybe brought some additional reflections.
Yes, it's actually on the crowdfunding platforms. I've heard that some of the investors, like pupils and giving their little pocket money and so on, they are always looking for women who would like to install their own micro or just few PV module systems. So maybe that would be like for encouragement of the international scene, that we encourage local women from developing countries to start such a crowdfunding or crowdlending. To start with their wishes online. And the other thing, Laura, what you said about, well, why should it be our task? We already have so many tasks and we don't know where to start and where to finish. But I would say I meet so many young women who have their babies on their arms and they are making, I don't know, from vaccination to doctors to education to whatever decisions, and they want to participate. They want to do something. They want to go solar. So a playground solar group where the information is exchanged, a playground solar energy cooperative with a crowdfunding box just next to the bench. It would be already it. And I don't want to go that far, like it's actually even not a joke, but a menopause solar group, 3 a.m. in the morning meetings. So there are lots of engagement possibilities now, especially that we went online. But these are like little hints what's going on out there in some of the parts of the society I meet. Molly, you unmuted yourself. I'm really curious.
Yeah, I like that idea of the Spielplatz solar cooperative. I think it's happening in some places. What Christina mentioned about, we're talking already from a privileged Western perspective. If we sometimes, or not only Western, but rich developed countries, when we think, of course we can own our own bank accounts and own capital and own property, and we just have to complain that the men don't do enough of the washing. But it reminded me also about how much the impacts of fossil fuel extraction also tends to fall very heavily on women. How when there's when land is polluted, when water is polluted, it's the women often in developing countries who suffer that, because they're the ones who go fishing and they're the ones who look after the land. And so that's connected in a global sense with us who are fighting to be equally represented as part of the solutions. And I think, one thing, it's not a task for us in the community energy sector, but it's a task for us in all of society, and it'll make this problem easier, is getting that care work equally shared. it's something that came up also when we talked all about the personal experiences, like I don't have children, but I think about maybe if I would like to. And then I think, oh, but does that mean then I'm out of political activism for 10 or 15 years? And I shouldn't have to face that choice. And my male partner doesn't also really face that choice. So let's change that so that we can, continue to be mothers and carers and also caring for the energy transition at the same time.
That said wonderful, Molly. Thank you. Maybe I can bring an example for care work and other financial barriers. I don't know, many of you know, but maybe if you don't know, then if there is a cooperative village windmill, that's a cash cow for the village. Those villages have free transport. Some of them have free electric vehicles for anybody to use. You can organize from this money also free daycare. This is where the life starts. Just a living example, like 8 kilometers from here. You can just drive around. Thanks to three pieces of 3 megawatt windmills. It's nice. Okay, there is a big silence. Is there any question in the... Laura, you will have to leave soon. So I would thank you very much for your participation. And I hope that we will meet again at one of the panels, because I found your input very exciting. And especially you mentioned the mentoring. I would love to hear more about this at one point. I will ask Stefan to organize something.
Thank you. You can also ask Christine, because it's through GWNet that mentoring occurs. So I think that's also a really interesting approach to bring in, is the mentoring that we can do now for the generations that will be taking on the leadership roles. I think that's really key as well. But thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Laura. So, and we have here warm greetings from Uganda, from Eddie Mutebi, as Executive Director of Union of Community Development Volunteers based in Uganda. I know there are also, I know there are also many women in Uganda being very, very active in community energy. So yes, that's also one of the hubs. So Timo, maybe I would... Oh, okay. Antonia Proca from Riscope, we were talking about in Brussels. Thanks a lot for the great discussion. I have a question to the panel. Since together with the issue of time, the lack of financial resources appears as the biggest barrier to join a citizen energy community, would making community shares cheaper for women be a way forward? Is this idea aligned with our cooperative principles? What would you say? That's a very exciting question. So one share could be cheaper for a woman with a certain percentage. What do you think about this? Or do you have other ideas?
I think it could be part of the solution as well, but I would like to see that women don't just participate financially, but also participate in the decision making. And for that, I guess we need something like, daycare, or the ability for women to have to do less care work in general and have more time and capacity to participate in community energy initiatives.
Mm-hmm. But certain community energy groups could maybe decide to give 5% off. Why not? At least there is a pink tax existing where women pay more for the same product or service, or product usually, as men. So we could maybe make a anti-pink 5%. I would ask Stefan Zenger and then Christina to give a comment. Stefan, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And great pleasure to listen to all of you. Very good to hear your thoughts. I just wanted to answer this because I've joined a community, a cooperative. I'm a member of a cooperative where the share is for every member is the same, is 250 euro. So we're not talking about a big amount of money. So everybody who wants to join pays that, and the investment is then done on a loan basis. So the members who want to then invest money, that is in addition. But I think what is important is that the 250 euro gives every member, regardless how much they later invest, the same voting right. So the decisions are based on that. And I know that some cooperatives have even lower shares, which they offer. So I'm not sure whether the point isn't so much, and of course we talk about an industrialized country here, isn't so much that this threshold is too big, but maybe that is my question then to the panelists here. Are you aware of this? And wouldn't it be useful to talk about this more? That actually, in the case of many cooperatives, because when I speak to many people, and now, again, we always are now on two different levels here. I'm working for World Wind Energy Association, and the people I meet, Christina, we meet often, we do not talk about installing solar panels, but I think also with the Corona pandemic, we are now much more where we are living. But are you aware, or are people sufficiently aware of this? Is this maybe something we should talk about also to make, maybe in particular women, if they tell us that they do not have enough money, maybe we should just talk about it. Hey, it's not that much a matter of having a lot of money.
That's a great idea, Stefan. Let's start communicating that. By the way, our Munich, because in Munich there are every fifth woman whom you see on the street is poverty endangered. So we have 100 euro level to enter the cooperative. But of course, we have to think about something for refugee women to be able, for instance, to participate. Christina, you were previously raising your hand, and then Timo would follow.
Thank you. I think I don't think it's a good idea to make the shares for women cheaper than for men. I think that might create chaos. But I very much like the idea of offering benefits, like you mentioned, the daycare thing, or some special incentives to get women joining these groups. And I mean, what I have to say, and probably also because I am working in the field and I'm alert about the subject, but I do see that with the Renewable Energy Directive and its possibility to open space for energy community projects and cooperatives, there's a lot of talk, and there are also support programs in Austria managed by Klimafonds, Klima- und Energiefonds, that facilitate the creation of these projects, and there are toolkits now being prepared. So I think there is it is starting, but I do agree with Stefan. You can never communicate enough, and it's a general thing. We need to make people aware where the energy they consume is coming from, and that they can basically. I think people are still, they're not aware that they can be active agents of change in the energy transition. They still believe that this is something which is done by the big players, but they have no influence on it. And this is something which we need to change. And once you get them involved, they will soon quickly understand. And this has then also repercussions on other areas, because I think people will automatically become more conscious about resources in general, and might be also influenced in different positive ways through the participation in these projects.
Yeah, maybe I would add, Christina, to your points that maybe energy cooperatives, they're called, it's a possibility to participate for poor people. This is often the definition. because of the low financial levels to enter. But the cooperatives, they are not functioning like a club, but they take care not only of their members, but they are taking care about the society. It means that the free services I have listed, that is for everybody, whether member or not, can enjoy. And that is very often with cooperatives, so that they have an extremely strong inclusion principles. The housing cooperatives, or they also let their spaces to be used by the neighbors, or they car sharing systems or mobility systems or free services. So therefore it has a double. It's interesting that exactly the poorest people in the society, they take care of their surrounding because they know what it means. So they know how to help. Timo, I would like to ask you to continue.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think the financial aspect is one hurdle for sure, but maybe not alone. So we heard that, for example, in some cooperatives, the money you have to invest, it's a sum for some people, of course. So if you have to invest 250 euro, it's something some people also have to struggle with. But I think it's also a communication problem that many people don't know that it's possible to invest with around 250 euro to start with it in a cooperative. But I could imagine, and we will find it out in the second study actually, but I could imagine that many people relate investing into a renewable energy infrastructure that you need a lot more money than 250 euro. And maybe that's the starting reason why they don't even deal with it. And I know from some community energy projects that they already gather some ideas to deal with this financial question. So for example, I know one community energy project close to Bonn, and they offer payment rates that you can pay this your share, that you can pay it in rates. And maybe this is an alternative option to the idea to make it cheaper to offer payment rates if you cannot pay the sum in one as a whole. And yeah, I think we need to communicate this because I want to bring in one more point, that also if you compare older people, and older people are more probably to participate in community energy, a lot more probable than young people, but also here more men than women. Of course, also with older people, men have in statistic more capital, but women will have the capital, but still don't participate in many cases. And then on the other side, young people are underrepresented in community energy, but we have big potential. So you spoke about Fridays for Future, you spoke about the climate movements, and we have even more women participating than men in the climate movement. And I think we should try our best to communicate the possibility to invest in a local energy project, which is also meaning an investment in climate protection, and to rise capacities, to rise the participation rate of young women, also young men, for community energy.
This is a great idea. I already have some ideas how to implement that, maybe in my own. Our webinar will be closing at 2:30, and I would slowly like to bring this to the end. Stefan, maybe would you like to conclude or to collect the best-ofs of today?
Well, thank you, Christina. I'm quite grateful for your participation in this webinar, because of course the purpose of this webinar is on the one hand to kind of summarize the first year and talk about the findings, and they were mainly numbers, statistics. So we know now what we're talking about. I mean, everybody could guess that it must be something like that, but now we have the figures. You were surprised?
I was surprised. I was
Which sense?
surprised. Well, it was like, you know, till I don't see it black on white, the numbers. It's like, you know, in my tired motherhood, Corona, homeschooling, working full time, trying to manage the impossible. You know, it's like nice to have the numbers to see. Yes, it is really as I feel. It is really as those feel whom I'm in contact with. But we don't have enough time even to communicate, to exchange these things. So I always think I'm alone, and the other one thinks it's alone because we have a lack of time for communication. So your study is just a wonderful reassurance. I'm not doing anything wrong. This is how it is, and this is our task. This is the task of the politics. Make it possible for women who want to participate. It's not obligatory, but it has to be minimal effort, minimal time, and let us women to be there where we want to be.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, what I found really surprising, what I did not expect, is that we found such a difference between wind and solar projects and between those projects with smaller number of investors. Let's call it investors, shareholders. So obviously these are the projects where you have higher shares. Huh? So this is what we just talked about. 250 euro is easier for many, not for everyone, I agree. So that was, for me, something this where you say, aha, okay, I really have some new insights here. But what you now talked about is, of course, what we now really need to find out more in depth, and with also find some empirical evidence for that. And I'm very grateful that we got your now feedback and already your some personal and professional ideas and how you look at it. Because now, as we start the second year and we want to end with recommendations, with kind of some even not guidelines, but we want to know how can we make things better, how can we improve the situation. And we're now trying to understand what are the factors which are important for this. And the conversation today, I think, is very, very useful for this. We do not have now the final answer, of course. And even after in a year, when we publish our second study with the recommendations, we will not have the very final answer. But I think we are now at a good position that we can really take it from here, and hopefully can still count on your insights, on your support, and that you are all kind of guiding us in this. And based on this, then that is, by the way, let me underline this. We are a small group of people here, but the public response we are getting is very good. We have a longer list of reports in German international media than we usually have with such projects. So there is a reaction, and people are reacting to this. And I'm sure that at the end, this project also has an impact on how people look at it, and maybe even we can change the situation at the end of the day. In this sense, again, I would like to say thank you to all of you for helping us, for contributing, for discussing this. And again, it's now the start of the second year. I look forward to continuing this discussion.
Thank you also in my name very much for your participation, and looking forward to continue working with you.
Thanks. Thanks for organizing the event.
Thank you all for participating.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Christine.